All right. Thank you all so much for being with us today, this afternoon or evening, depending on where you are in the country. Let's get started. So my name is Tristan Reece. I'm the Director of Family Formation at Family Equality. And usually panels like this are my full-time job. I'm usually traveling the country, running events for prospective parents and training providers so that when we're trying to build our families, we are not also trying to train our doctors or foster care workers or whomever. But obviously the pandemic really threw things kind of up in the air. And so now I'm sitting in front of this computer full time, as maybe most of you are as well. And so I'm still doing the family formation work, but I'm also building the suite of online programs that we're now offering, both for people who already have kids, as well as for probably most folks like you who are prospective parents or are hoping to add to your family. Yeah, so it's a little bit about me. Personally, I am a dad. I have 3 kids. So I have 2 older kids who are 9 and 12 who are adopted. And then I have a 2.5-year-old who is my biological child. So I'm transgender and I gave birth to him myself. So I've done it both ways, through adoption and biology. And so if anyone has questions about too, what does it mean to build a family using multiple different tactics? Happy to talk about that as well today. Cool. Well, I'm really, really excited to be bringing you this panel of personal stories from people who have been involved in working with known donors. Often we hear a lot about what is it like to sort of go through formal, like work with a cryobank and all of that. And so we thought, what if we went back to kind of our community's roots, which is really using the resources, the connections, the relationships that we already have to build our families. And so you're going to hear 3 totally different kinds of stories today as we approach this topic. Each person is going to talk a little bit about both their story as well as were there medical systems that they interacted with or not, were there legal systems they interacted with or not. And we just really want to make sure that you all know that however you build your family that is right for you is the right way. Like there is no one right way. There's just a lot of different choices. And at Family Equality, we just want to make sure that you understand all the different choices so that you can make your decisions from a place of empowerment and not from a place of fear. So yeah, and I'm really excited to bring you your first story, which is from a Raven who's in Dallas, where it is very hot today, who actually comes from a similar professional background as Biff. So Raven is the resolutions coordinator for the City of Dallas Office of Homeless Solutions. But she's also worked in high school as a special ed teacher. She's worked in juvenile detention facilities, career case manager for at-risk youth. Really excited both about your professional and personal passions, as well as to hear your story.
Hello again, everyone. Again, my name is Raven, and today I am currently 21 weeks and 4 days pregnant. I decided to, well, first off, I always wanted to be a mother. I've had friends who had children at a very young age, but once I got with my wife, Brittany, we decided that we wanted to start a family after we got married and got settled. And we wanted to use a known donor because one, we both have master's degrees and we finished in 2016. Then we got married in 2018 and we also moved across the country. So if you can think, that cost us a lot of money. So doing research on IVF and IUI, we just couldn't budget that, but we knew we wanted to have children. And that's when we turned to the known donor process. Um, we initially wanted to use one of Brittany's brothers because I was the one that was going to carry, and we wanted to have her DNA within the child somehow. But we moved to Texas. The majority of our family is in Virginia and DC. So it was very hard for us to travel back and forth to try and conceive. And we know with traveling and different plans, that changes your hormones. So it just didn't work out for us. So we told ourselves we were going to take a break, and then we started researching unique ways to find a known donor, and we came across an app called Just a Baby. It's very similar to, your dating apps like Tinder or Plenty of Fish. I'm not sure what other dating apps are out there, but you pretty much swipe through profiles. And on this app, it specifically had men and women who were looking to be sperm donors, egg donors, surrogates, co parents, anything dealing with trying to make a baby. So that's the app that we stuck with. It took us about 4 months to find someone who we kind of connected with through the app. And from there, we ended up meeting in person and having a sit down interview where we learned about their history, their family's medical history, how many other women did they help conceive. And I believe they mentioned about 4 to 5 women they've helped in the past. So after that, we kind of went through our known donor agreement that we found online just to protect us, even though we found them on an app that was specifically for donating sperm, we still wanted to have some legal ramifications in place. We didn't get an attorney or a lawyer involved. However, we went through our known donor agreement. We signed it in front of a notary. So it's kind of official that we can't call our donor for anything and our donor can't call us for anything other than specifically donating sperm and creating a child. Um, I didn't take any medical steps because I knew that I didn't want to pay for IUI or IVF. Um, the only thing that I did do, I visited Aspire Fertility Clinic in Austin, Texas, just to make sure that my reproductive system was working properly, which it was. And from there, that's when I learned the prices more in depth about IUF and IVF and IUI, excuse me. So we knew a known donor was definitely going to be the route that we wanted to take. And since we found them on an app specifically for donors, we didn't really have to ask them to be our donor. They kind of knew what we were, conversing about. Um, and we just so happened to find a donor who was fairly close to where we lived. So we were able to have the sample dropped off and we were able to pick it up during my ovulation window. So that made it a lot easier. We didn't have to worry about it getting mailed in the little freezers and thawing it and all the extra stuff that comes with it. We were able to get the live sperm right there, bring it home, wait for it to liquefy, and we used the Mozi baby syringe to inseminate. Um, we did that for about 3 months before finding out that I was pregnant. Um, it was pretty simple for us, it seemed like, but it did take somewhat of a lot of planning just because I thought I was going to go one route, but then we had to research another route. Um, and that's kind of my story.
Great. So talk to me a little bit. I often do advise people that if they have insurance, that they just do get a fertility workup because it's usually covered under preventative care. And it's one way that regardless of whether you're using a known donor or an unknown donor, you can just double check ahead of time that you don't have blocked tubes or fibroids or anything that might get in the way. Can you say just a little bit, like what was that first fertility workup process like for you, and did insurance cover it?
Insurance did not cover it, but we went there because we tried once with Brittany's brother, and I'm very in tune with my body. I know when my menstrual is coming. I know when I'm ovulating. I follow my cervical mucus, so I just know myself, and I just knew for a fact that when we inseminated with him, it was gonna work, but it didn't. So I thought something was wrong with me because I've never had any pregnancy scares or I've never tried to get pregnant and I'm not in a heterosexual relationship. So I just never really knew. So going there, they pretty much did an ultrasound to make sure that I wasn't pregnant because I thought maybe it's just not showing up on a pregnancy test. Maybe my hormones aren't just there yet. So I just had to go to a medical professional to see what all was going on. Um, they looked at my ovaries and they mentioned that I had a lot of eggs, but sometimes a lot of eggs could be a negative thing because it kind of blocks the sperm from getting in there. But that wasn't an underlying factor as to why it didn't take the first time. So that was pretty much all I had done with them. They did suggest getting my fallopian tubes reviewed with some dye that they would inseminate in me. And I just didn't want to go through all of that since they said that there was nothing truly wrong.
It looks
Um,
okay.
yeah, it looked okay. That was like an extra step if I wanted to do that, which I didn't. I just told myself, hey, well, we'll just try again and continue to try.
I mean, what's so strange to me, like for me as a queer person, it seems like any old straight person can just get pregnant and have a baby, but actually our bodies are not very effective at getting pregnant. And so it can feel like, oh my gosh, this is taking 3 months, this is taking 5 months. How long should I wait before I need to get a workup or whatever? So it is a little bit funny to me that after one time of trying, you're like, something is definitely wrong. Where, I work with so many parents who they're like, yeah, it took a year or whatever.
Yeah, and I later did research and it said that most women who do like in-home inseminations, it takes about 6 tries. So I was worried on the first when the average is 6.
Yes.
I just have
Um,
to calm down a little bit.
yeah, but it's good practice for the whole rest of pregnancy and parenting. So yeah. So someone is asking, how much did that workup cost without the insurance?
Ooh, I honestly don't remember, but I want to say it was expensive. I want to say it was about 365 $365.
I was gonna say, I think it's usually like between $300 and $500 out of pocket if you
Mhm.
don't do the extra stuff where they inject the dye to make sure that your tubes are open. Um, and again, just remember there are so many variables. And do you mind with me asking how old are you, Raven?
I'm 29.
Okay, so what happens is often as egg quality does and egg quantity decreases just over time, often like if someone is maybe 37, 38, 39, they probably will want to get the fertility workup, including the dye, because unfortunately, just the fertility window is just closing a little bit. And so
Mhm.
they just usually often want to sort of maximize their chances. And if you're using an unknown donor and you're paying $750 a vial, you also may want to maximize your chances. So yeah. And then someone's asking about, this is a question that comes up a lot. When you work with the cryobank, you get the donor number and you have an opportunity on your own to then, if you want to, connect with some of the donor siblings. And so someone's wondering, did your donor give you the contact information for other families that he donated to? Is there any chance to stay in touch with them, or would you not want that? Like, what is your vision for that?
Well, I do have access to contact the donor, but we didn't ask for that information just because we didn't really think that far, honestly. My wife, she's adopted and she has pretty much like a blended family. So in the future, if we thought maybe, hey, we want to get to know some of those other children, we have the option to reach out to our donor via text to get any information if that other woman is willing to share.
And of course, with 23andMe and all of those things, not to mention what that technology is going to be like in 18 years when your baby is ready, it may be even more easy to be able to build those relationships if you want. And this is also another area where it really is about personal choice. Some people really feel that family is the people who love you and who raise you and who care for you. And just because there's a genetic link somewhere else, that doesn't make that person family. Others are the opposite, where they feel like kids have a right to know their genetic relatives. And so it really is, there is no yes or no or right or wrong. And a lot of donor conceived children, again, there's a split. Some are like, I really want to know that extended family, and others are like, I don't know those people. And so it's just about trying to figure out what works right for you, for your family.
Yeah.
So someone wants to know, how did you mentally prepare yourself for the chance of failure, that it could possibly take 6 tries? There's so much mystery around fertility and the way that the body works.
Well, I tried to just stay very positive about the situation since I didn't get negative feedback from Aspire. Um, I was told to kind of calm down the intensity of my workouts because I like to do the high intense interval workouts like CrossFit and Orange Theory. So I had to do more yoga and light workout. So that kind of helped me stay calm. And just talking to friends who've gone through similar processes. I have one close friend who actually did IVF. So she was my go to person to talk to all the time because she did a more strenuous process than I did. So she kind of helped me stay calm. And now she has a beautiful 6-month old.
Oh, that's so good. Yeah, when I'm working with people, I just encourage them to stay, like, hold tightly to your vision of becoming a parent and hold lightly to how you get there, because there's a lot of things that could happen. People want to know a little bit more about this app. Like, is there a compensation associated with that? How does that work?
There is, like I said, it's pretty much like a dating app where you swipe through profiles and some have a picture and some don't, and they have a mini bio about what they're offering or what they're looking for, and you can message them on that app, and that's when you have that conversation about compensation. Since our donor was in Dallas, about 15 minutes away from us, surprisingly he was the cheapest that we found. His sample was $20 each sample. However, I came across some other donors who were 600 to 700, but they were also mailing with the cryo banks and the frozen sperm. I'm not sure of all the terminology, but so it was just a different process. But since he was here in the area, he didn't have to travel much. He didn't have to do much but provide the sample. And we only, I think we did about 5 times each month for 3 months. So yeah, the prices vary. Just a Baby is an app, you can download it and just swipe through and message people who you connect with. It's really
Oh,
simple.
fascinating. What a time to be alive. And what was the name of that app again?
Just a Baby.
Just a baby. Okay. And then folks are interested in, what do you plan to do in terms of, you talked a little bit about your legal relationship with the donor. What do you plan to do after the baby is born to solidify the legal connections between you and your partner and the child?
I think we are working towards my wife adopting the baby. That's in the process. She's done more research than I have. Um, so she knows more info about it, but that's the route that we plan to take when they finally get here.
Yeah, and it really depends on the state. It also depends on, your comfort with uncertainty. Some people are okay, just doing your best and seeing what happens, while others want to be just even more secure and safe. I think it also depends on how certain you are that the world, the landscape, and the protections for LGBTQ people are going to remain in place in the coming years. I'm becoming less and less certain about that, and so I'm becoming more and more risk averse. And so yeah, and no matter what state you're in, it's never a bad idea to do a second parent adoption, just to have that in place. Your partner being on the birth certificate, that is not a legally binding document. A birth certificate is not a legally binding document. You being married, a marriage is not a legally binding document when it comes to the legal protection of the future child. So yeah, so that's something to think about. Cool. I think, one more
Yeah.
question is, I mean, it seems from some of the questions that some of the attendees have already been trying some things that haven't worked yet. And so again, like, you tried something with your partner's brother's sperm that didn't work. What was that like did you feel like you were giving up? Did it just feel like an evolution? How did you adjust to trying something new and know to try something new and not just keep trying the same thing?
Well, I think we kind of came to the conclusion that it wasn't the right timing because we had just moved to Texas. We were still getting acclimated to the city and our jobs. So we were kind of stressed on top of thinking about how are we going to get brother-in-law here? How long is he going to stay? How is this going to work with me going to work, Brittany going to work, and him being here? Um, but can you say the second part of the question?
Yeah, I mean, it was just like, how do you know when to try something new, I guess?
And once we realized that we couldn't continue to pay to go to DC or him pay to come to Texas, we then thought we need to find someone local. And that's when we went to the Just a Baby app. Like I said, I've always wanted to be a mother. So I've been pretty open minded to the process from the beginning because I wanted it to happen. So I wasn't going to give up. I'm not a big fan of giving up.
Amazing, amazing. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story. We're going to have Raven stick around and come back at the end for more Q&A if more things come up. And so otherwise, we're going to go to our next story. Thanks again, Raven.
I think.
And so one thing that I notice when we think and talk about working with donors, period, is that we talk a lot, we hear a lot from the people who are pregnant. We don't actually get to hear kind of the other side of the story. Why would someone want to be a donor? What is it like being a donor? Is it annoying to have someone continue to come to your house and like try to get sperm from you every month? And so I invited Biff Chaplow, who is a stay-at-home parent living in Portland, Oregon. They have 3 children and also work a lot on issues of LGBTQ plus incarceration. And Biff is non-binary, and last year was a sperm donor for a couple who are both trans and are friends of Biff and their family. And so I thought it'd be kind of interesting to hear from the other perspective. What is it like being a donor? Why did you decide to do it? And anything else you want to share about what that was like for you and your family?
Yeah, so like Tristan said, I live in Portland. I have 3 kids. One of them is biological, and I stay at home with them. I also am sort of an interim executive director for an organization that works to support queer incarcerated folks. And so yeah, I've been a sperm donor for friends of ours, and the way that sort of came about is I think the first component is that my partner and I have been really public about our family making adventures and efforts and what parenting has been like. And so we're definitely, I think, well known among our community and friends in terms of like family stuff. And so my partner actually had a conversation with friends of ours when I wasn't there one time and volunteered my sperm. And the friends said that they were interested, and then we had a conversation from there. But essentially, you know, we had friends. There are a couple where neither of them has the ability to create sperm, and one of them wanted to carry themselves. And you know, they're friends. They don't have a ton of money. It's really not it was not feasible for them to you know, think about other options like purchasing sperm, you know, because at $700 a pop, that's just not realistic for a lot of people. And so, yeah, they considered, you know, they created one child from a sperm donor, and that sperm donor wasn't willing, or I don't really know the story there, but they were not able to create another one using that same donor. And so they approached me and asked if I would consider it. And I thought about it, and you know, I eventually said yes. But you know, some things I definitely had to weigh in that decision were really a lot about like, I think the first component is like, what, as a sperm donor, what is my role in this decision making? Like, is it my job to say yes or no based on how good of parents I think they might be? And I mean, yes, it was my decision that like I had agreed to, you know, in the past I had agreed to be a sperm donor for friends of mine who like, you know, they tried several times. So I actually did donate the sperm. They tried several times, and then they like broke up, you know, just months after that, and they didn't get pregnant. And it just made me think like, oh my goodness, like maybe I should, you know, put a little more thought into that process. Like what, you know, um, I really don't feel a connection to my sperm, but it might be hard, I think, to see a child that I contributed to it, you know, creating that maybe was struggling or suffering. And so I did have to think about that process quite a bit. And so for me, it was really about making sure I trusted the people I was giving my sperm to, because I want to make sure that I'm contributing to creating like a happy, healthy family. And that's like sticky and tricky, I know, because it's, you know, a lot of that is just so arbitrary. But ultimately, I decided that I really did trust these friends. They had been together, you know, a long time. They had another kid. And so I decided that I would go ahead and do it. So, you know, initially we decided, before we started the process, we decided to sign legal documents, which obviously I think is always a good practice. And just so you know, like the sperm donor wants those documents in place just as much as the recipients. So, you know, so we signed legal documents. We did things like, you know, they asked me to do HIV and STD testing. They definitely wanted to know a little bit about my background, medically speaking, family history, stuff like that. And so we went through that stuff. We signed legal documents, and then we started the process. And so in terms of when I say the process, what I mean is it's like super, you know, it's like a super homemade process. So essentially, they would buy syringes for me, and they gave them to me. And then when they were ready, when they were in the right part of their cycle to be trying, they would basically say like, okay, I'm going to come on these nights. And I would just basically need to make sure the sperm was ready in those vials. And that process is definitely a little bit awkward. You know, there's just like a lot of personal and sexual things going on there. But you know, like we're queer people, and you know, and like a big value of mine and theirs is sexual liberation, and so we just tried to do it as gracefully as we could. But like for people thinking about being donors, or people thinking about using a donor in this way, there's an awkwardness to it, no doubt. So, and honestly, it made it better that I was doing that process with friends, people that I knew and trusted. It definitely made it like easier to go through that process. But they would come pick it up from me, and then they would, you know, take it from there. And so in terms of like timing, you know, we heard Raven, it's so funny hearing Raven talk about getting stressed out about not getting pregnant the first time. Because after having donated twice and having made a baby of my own, I don't think any of those like were done in 6 months. And so yeah, so that was a little bit funny. But with this particular situation, it took us, I think, about 7 months, and they got pregnant and miscarried. So we waited a few months until they were ready, and we started again. And then I think it was several more months from there. So I think we were definitely over a year of trying. And I didn't mind that. I didn't mind that. I think my partner started to get a little bit like, okay, when are we going to be done with this? And I know that the couple I was donating to they definitely felt badly. But the truth is, like, for those of us that can make sperm, it really, I shouldn't speak for everybody, but for me, it really is not that big of a deal. Like it really is not a big deal. It was not like a huge inconvenience. And having been in a position where I have like made a family, and being a queer person, I've grown up knowing that like creating family is not easy. Especially if you want to create a biological child, it's not easy. And I knew that, and I felt, and I still feel a duty to like making, like I have something that my fellow queer people need, and I'm happy to give it to them, even if it means some like awkwardness and and like a year of trying. So yeah, so let's see. So then they finally, I should say, like in the process, they're, after trying for a while, they definitely wanted to start to explore like why weren't they getting pregnant? Because this person that I donated to has had their own child. They've also been a surrogate for another person, and so they're like well acquainted with the process of getting pregnant, and this was taking longer for them than it had been in the past. So they asked me to do some medical testing. So I went to the University Hospital here in Portland. I got my sperm count tested. I think they like looked at a few other things, but honestly, my job was just to like show up, do my thing, and then let them all deal with it from there. And as it turns out, like everything was fine. It's just sometimes the way that nature works, it just takes a while. And so so I did that sort of testing. That was honestly like very easy and simple. I think it was relatively cheap on the on the part of the couple I was donating to. I want to say like a few $100s to have that done. And then they got to a point where they looked into doing sperm washing. And I'm not even going to try to explain this to you all because I will definitely tell you incorrect information. But essentially, I know what they wanted to do was to make the like sperm more concentrated and remove the things you don't need in there. And so they sent me to the hospital to basically give my sperm. The hospital would sperm wash it and then give it to them. And that was a fine process too. It just definitely took time on my part to go to the drive down there and do it. And eventually they got pregnant. And then of course, after that, I didn't have any official commitments beyond that. Legally, the thing that we had agreed to was that I would have no official role in their life, in the child's life, but that I'm fine with them knowing who I am and having free access to contact me when they want to. I mean, they're friends of ours too, so it's not like, it's not like I'm not already seeing them on Facebook and, following what they're doing and having dinner with them and whatever. But I went into it accepting or knowing that like at 5 years old or 7 years old, the kid might want me to be around or might want to talk to me or the parents might want that. And so I went into it knowing that that might be the case and I'm okay with that. I definitely like have some experience and exposure to the idea from a child's perspective of a known donor or an unknown donor. And it definitely was important to me to be willing to like be known and stay known and that the parents were okay with that too. And they definitely were. That's what they wanted to. They want to be able to like tell their kid, even at 5 or 6 years old, like, oh, hey, this is Biff. This is your donor. And that's like okay, that's definitely okay with me. And so yeah, I think another aspect of this is, I am a non-binary person, but in that identity, I don't really have a lot of that identity is not really wrapped up in my body, and so I'm really happy with my body. And what my body does, and I feel grateful for my body and what it does. And so my like non-binary identity didn't really have much, role in my decision to be a sperm donor. And so yeah, I think if you're a couple, you're thinking about finding a sperm donor. Honestly, gay men or gay-ish non-binary folks that are able to produce sperm that are in your life are great options. Like I'm willing to do that for somebody. And there was no compensation or money involved in this because that wasn't really something I was interested in. Not saying I would turn it down. Joking. But that wasn't something I was interested in. So I've always felt like, hey, fellow gays, like we should be willing to do this for our friends and chosen family who want to make families, but like they should not have to pay $700 for sperm. It's just not. I know it's worth that for some people, but it's definitely not. And the benefit of having somebody in your life that you can ask to do that is them. You can see firsthand who they are. You can sort of witness that stuff, and it's not really about who I am on paper or like in a profile. You could see me in person, and check that out. And that, that's also totally the prerogative of the people looking for a donor. Some people want, I think, that process to be a bit more removed. I don't want to say impersonal because I don't want to make it sound negative, but other people, there is a benefit to it being personal, and it being something that is like very known among everybody. And so yeah, that's kind of my story. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Great, we have some. Can you hear me all right, Biff? I changed my microphone.
Yeah, I can.
Okay, good. Okay, so we actually had a bunch of questions all centered around like how did they ask you? How did those conversations go? How do you suggest people asking via email, over dinner? Can you say a little bit more about what those conversations were, what questions they asked you, etc.?
So the short answer is it should depend on who you're asking, and how well you know them. So that's like definitely something you want to consider, because I am a big fan of emailing people about personal shit. Like I think that writing it down and being able to really control how you say it, what you say is great, and you're not expecting that, like, that person isn't responsible for showing some sort of emotional reaction that you might want to see if you're sitting with them at dinner. So like, I think it's probably a bad idea to sit them down at dinner and be like, hey, will you give us your sperm? Because they should make that decision not under pressure. They should have time to think about that decision. And so it should just, so it depends on how well you know them. I think that they asked me through a text message, to be honest with you. I can't really remember exactly, but I'm pretty sure it was not in person. It was through text message or something. And then after I said, like, I would totally be open to that, we met in person and talked more. So they came over for dinner and we talked more about it. And they basically just laid out, this is what we want, this is what we're interested in. How do you feel about that? And then I was able to say, well, yes, I'm willing to be a donor. And and then it's important definitely to figure out, like, what does that mean for that person? Because you want to make sure that the donor's desires are lining up with what you want too. Otherwise you can get yourself maybe in a sticky situation. But it just so happened that I was honestly, like, they're great people, they're good parents, and if they want my sperm, I'm happy to abide by like whatever they want from that. And if they were like, we don't want you, we just want it and that's it. We don't want, we're never going to tell our kid that you're the donor. Fine. Like that's, they're good parents. That's their decision and their family. So yeah, I think it was through text message.
Well, someone's wondering, what about your parents? How did they feel about it? And, I think that's one of the benefits people talk about when working with an unknown donor, is that there is like a whole psychology workup that there's a little bit more cleanliness there, I guess, emotionally. You kind of know what you're getting. I mean, what did your parents think about you being a donor? Do they feel any attachment to this baby that was your sperm baby?
No, they don't feel any attachment. But my parents are like supportive to a fault. So I don't know that I'm like a good person to speak on that. I mean, I could make some pretty crazy decisions and they would be like on board, which is wonderful. But yeah, I think that it really is obviously like, I'm not judging any person's desires for a sperm donor, but like the idea that it is more like clean or sanitized one way or the other, I think is probably not an accurate idea. Because the truth is that like there's so much you can hide behind like what is on paper or what is in evaluations or this or that. And like, if I could implore any of you, we're queer people. I want more queer people around. Let's increase our chances. Pick a queer donor for your baby.
That's not science.
Just in case it is. Yeah, there is an agenda. There is a gay agenda, and I want more gay people around. So anyways.
But I would say that I think if I would see it as a flag if my donor's parents felt conflicted about them donating, if there was a concern that they may have some kind of an unhealthy attachment that was not in alignment with what you as the donor wanted and what the parents wanted. Do you know what I mean?
I mean, I might see that as a flag too. Yeah, I might, because you know, but then I don't, if it's a known donor, you have to like trust the person that you're, except if you think like that their parents can affect their decision making in that sort of way, then that's probably not a safe person to go with. But you know, but my parents like seeing pictures of the baby, because they want to see if it looks like me. You know, they want to see if it looks like my child. And so they like seeing pictures. They like, oh, that's your chin or whatever. I have a very distinct chin, apparently. And so they do like seeing that stuff, as does like my other friends or family that know. But there's no attachment there. But you know, having created a family, I have adopted children. You know, my family is like a big jumble of just like single parents and kids from who knows where. And so those have just never been like, you know, things that my family's like really paid attention to or cared about.
Gotcha. And we had just one more question, which is, when you look at the baby that you were the sperm donor for, do you feel an emotional connection? Like, what does that feel like for you? What can people kind of expect that their donor might experience when they see their child?
I would say that like I felt an emotional connection only in that I felt like really joyful that I could do that for people that I cared about and loved. And so like seeing the baby, I did not have any like deep desire to like hold it and connect with it. I felt really happy that like, because I've had a baby, I've seen my child be born and know like what a amazing process that is. And so just knowing that I could help somebody do that is really amazing. But no, I don't feel any like deep connection any more than I would another friend's baby, you know.
Yeah, cool. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story. I hope you'll be able to stick around as well at the end in case any more questions come up. But now I'm really excited to turn us over to Lawrence. Thank you, Biff.
Thanks.
Now, Lawrence, I'm really excited to share your story for a lot of reasons, but I think, you know, we spoke already about, you know, queer people really forming families on our own terms and having done that for as long as there have ever been LGBTQ plus people. But there is a little bit of a resurgence of attention paid to the creative ways that we are building family with platonic friends across households, those kinds of things. And so I'm really excited to bring your story and hear your perspective of, you know, you are a gay dad living in LA. You are a book author, former TV personality turned publicist, and you're co-parenting. You are a dad with your lesbian best friend, and you all three of you live together. And so I would really love to hear how that happened and how that's working out for you, and what are some of the challenges that you've been able to overcome, and what do you think are some of the gifts of having this different type of configuration?
Different type. I love how you put that because that's exactly how it is. um, where do I begin with this? So it started about 5 years ago. My co-parenting partner, her name is Brandy. We both worked together. She was a bartender and I was a host at the Abbey. And we were talking one day at work and just, you know, just like best friends talk, like, what do you want, you know, out of life? And both just kind of feeling like we would never really have a family because the dating life in LA just absolutely sucks. And she was single and I was single. So while we were having that conversation and talking about like what's important to us as far as being parents and becoming parents, a coworker of ours that was listening to the conversation turns and says, well, why don't you two just have a baby together? And we both kind of looked at each other and we said, that actually kind of makes sense. You know, for us, it made sense because one of the things that was really important for us as far as starting a family was that whatever child we end up having, whether it was together or with somebody else, we wanted to make sure that our child had a relationship with both biological parents. I just thought it was really important whether I was with a partner and he and I decided to go, you know, have a baby, or she was with a partner or whatnot, that, you know, our child had a relationship with its mother, and it was the same for her. She felt that her child needed to have a relationship of some sort with the biological father. So again, it made sense for us to say, okay, this actually could work. So after like a 30-minute conversation, talking maybe up to about an hour, just going through like, what are your views on education? What are your views on spirituality and religion? And just I think like the things that people kind of find out along the way as they're parenting. We kind of had that conversation at like the very beginning, just to make sure that we were both on the same page. And then maybe about 6 months to a year later, we ended up getting cast for a TV show. There was a TV show on the Abbey that was on the E! Network. And from there, that's when our process really started to speed up, because we were very interested to see what were our next steps, like what were we going to do next? And how does this all look for a gay man and a lesbian deciding to actually co-parent together? So they set us up with some appointments with fertility specialists. And that's kind of when we got acclimated to the whole process and our options, like would we do IVF or is it IUI? What does that kind of look like for us? Because we weren't going to do it naturally. People did ask. They were just like, are you going to do this the heterosexual way? Obviously, we weren't. It just did not work for us. So when we were talking with the fertility specialist, that's when she laid it all out. So a lot of the things that, Raven and Biff had discussed as far as like, the whole donor process is exactly what we learned. We learned that, we would have to quarantine my sperm and have it washed. So yes, it does make it more potent. So that way, you get maybe faster results. We went through that. We ended up learning that process. And she ended up having to get checked. They checked our DNA just to make sure that, everything was looking okay. They checked my sperm to make sure that my sperm was, swimming properly, because apparently they can swim backwards. Did not know that. So we learned a lot along the way, but the one thing that stood out to us was when the doctor said, me in particular, I wouldn't like this part of the donor process, considering that I wanted to be a hands-on dad and that we were co-parenting. And what she was getting at is there's an FDA guideline from back in like the 80s where openly gay men can't donate blood, but they also can't donate sperm. So technically, I'm ineligible as a gay man, an openly gay man, to donate sperm in any fertility clinic or specialist that doesn't notify a woman before they give her that sperm, because they can take it. It's just highly advised that they don't take sperm from a gay man, because we're high-risk donors because of our lifestyle. So even though I have a clean bill of health, and even though I'm perfectly fine, I'm still a high-risk donor because I'm a gay man. And back in the 80s, with the whole HIV and AIDS outbreak, that pretty much deemed us as not being fit to donate blood or sperm. So technically, I really couldn't even donate unless Brandy said yes, she was willingly, and had to sign off on it on paper, going to accept an openly gay man's sperm. And we kind of wanted to jump over that step, because now it gets kind of funny with the whole legal situation as far as like custody and would have rights to my own child. I mean, we intend to raise this child together. So what would that look like for us if I just became a donor on paper, even though I'm actually going to be raising my child, at home? And if something were to happen, whether he needs to get to the hospital or signing him up for school, do I have any rights? How am I protected? And so the doctor, she was so fantastic. She was so wonderful. She advised that in our process that we actually go and talk to a psychologist just to make sure that we were on the same page and have that conversation that we had at the very beginning. And then also to speak with, an attorney to draft up an agreement, much like what, the other donors would do. But our agreement was more so a parent agreement. In the sense where everything that we talked about before, as far as like our views on parenting and things of that nature, would now go down on paper, as well as custody. If we ever decide to move apart, what would that look like for us? So we set ourselves a radius to make sure that we stay within a certain mileage, if we decide to split homes. And then what does it also look like for additional parents? Because people love to ask, well, when you start dating, which she is now, what does that look like for you in the future? And what does it look like for you in the future if something were to happen to you guys? So anyway, we went through that whole process, put it all on paper. So we have an agreement, which we definitely recommend for all families, to be quite honest with you. But After that, it just, we started again looking at the options and money became a thing. So Raven talked about money earlier, and I clearly remember at the beginning of this process 5 years ago, I was like, yo, this is expensive. It can go anywhere from 1,000 all the way up to 10,000 up to 100,000, and we don't have that kind of money. So for us, again, natural wasn't going to work, but we needed to consider other options because we both, were able to get pregnant. So we didn't necessarily need to go through the IVF, and we didn't necessarily need to do IUI. But that's when she ended up coming across Mozi baby. So she shows it to me. She says, hey, there's this company out there that has this, at-home insemination kit. It costs $80, $89 or whatnot. They send you 2 syringes and a petri dish, and you just got to fill it up, and then you pass it over to me, and then voila, we should get pregnant. And the price point for me was my selling point because, starting a family and maintaining a family is very expensive. But then in addition to that, what I really liked about and what we both really liked about Mozi baby was that she was comfortable with the process of it all. She didn't feel like it was intrusive, because again, she's the one that's carrying it. So we had to be very, very mindful about just what pregnancy overall and how she would get pregnant would affect her body, her spirit, her mind. There were just so many factors with that. But we ended up ordering the kit. They sent it to us. And within the first week, we were able to get pregnant. So we felt that, hey, we'll give this a try. And if it doesn't happen the first time, we'll go back and we'll do it again. And then if it doesn't happen again, after about 3 months, then we'll need to reconsider and then explore those other options that we found out about. But we were lucky enough to have Mozi baby that, and the universe and our biology that helped us get pregnant in the first week. So, flash forward, and today we have almost a 2-year-old baby boy, and he's fantastic. And that's it, I think.
Amazing. Yeah, that's really great. And we did have a couple of people ask, like, oh, is that true about the sort of like the gay men and the sperm thing? And it really depends on the state, in that you can have like some fertility clinics will be able to waive some of the restrictions on that. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's just like, yeah, it's
well, even more interestingly, on that note, with the whole COVID outbreak, they actually, loosened up those restrictions. So now gay men can donate blood, which now they should be able to donate sperm without any issues. But prior to all of that, that was a hurdle that we had to get over. And it just really took me by surprise. I'm like, how are you able to deem us as a high risk, and you don't even really know our background? How are we more high risk than a heterosexual man that's going out and having unprotected sex and doing whatever? So, it was a shock, and hopefully we can make some more progress on that.
Yeah, I hope so. There are so many areas where, it's no matter what path you choose, like none of these systems were built for us. Health insurance was not built for us. Fertility clinics were not built for us. Cryobanks were not built for us. Birth certificate processes were not built for us. No. So we were always having to hack the systems to try and find ways above, around, through, by breaking things through these systems, which is part of why we do these. Honestly, that's part of why we do these sessions, is to help give people knowledge to figure out how we can hack these systems. And so that's part of why I wanted to bring your story, because I just thought this is like just another way that we're figuring out how to live the lives that we want outside of the prescribed notions of what's expected of us.
Absolutely. And what's also interesting too is that, even though, yes, we're gay, we're queer or whatnot, everything is still pretty much similar when it comes to pregnancy. The pregnancy journey and trying to get pregnant, this happens a lot to heterosexuals as well. It's just that, as you pointed out, we had to jump through a lot more hurdles than being able to just, naturally conceive by a man and a woman, just going and doing the do. So gay people, we're very creative. And as they say in Jurassic Park, life will find a way. So we find a way.
Yes, it's so funny. I found myself quoting Jurassic Park when I was training birth workers a couple weeks ago, because I was saying it's weird to do work on pregnancy and family building in the middle of a pandemic. But, the truth is, people life finds a way. People give birth. People want to build families. You know, for many of us, that's an innate part of who we are and how we're hardwired. And we'll figure out a way, whether we're transgender, whether we're gay, whether we are two people who neither of you have sperm, like we'll find a way. It's just a matter of how doing it in a way that feels really empowering. It also is, it is about a little bit of risk mitigation. Like you went to an attorney, you saw a therapist, the two of you. You mentioned every couple, including heterosexual couples, should probably do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, good to work it out. Someone is wondering if there were any extra legal steps you took. So did you do a second parent adoption, or because you're both biologically related, did you not have to do that?
Did not have to do the adoption. That was something that we felt that we probably should, just to cover my interests. You know, but there's something that once when the baby's born, there's, I think it's called a declaration of paternity. And most fathers, if not all fathers that are present, you know, when the baby's born, before the mom is discharged, should sign that at the hospital. Because as you've noted a couple of times, the birth certificate typically means nothing. You know, you can put any man's name on the birth certificate or any donor's name on the birth certificate, and that still doesn't mean anything if you want that donor or that person to be involved in the child's life in some capacity. But the declaration of paternity actually states that this is the father. The hospital's recognizing that this is indeed the father, which holds up a little bit more weight in the court system, basically.
Gotcha. And now a couple of people are asking actually about Mozi Baby as a tool. And so what's interesting is actually, there's a really good question for you, Lawrence, that I'm going to give you. And then I'm going to actually bring in, we have our friend Maureen from Mozi Babies here and can just talk you through a little bit of this. This is not like a sales pitch at all. Family Equality, we just really like Mozi Baby, and we think it's a great tool when you're working with a known donor, especially in the middle of a pandemic when a lot of fertility places you can't go and a midwife maybe can't come to your house. So I'm going to ask you one more question, Lawrence, and then we're going to bring in Maureen to the conversation and we'll open up to some more questions. So someone is asking, do you think that there are unique challenges to co-parenting as friends rather than partners?
There were some very unique challenges that we did not anticipate. You know, I've been there since day one as far as, you know, the whole pregnancy journey. So having to watch her go through that was something unique and something special, something different, because it took our friendship to a completely different level. You know, the moments when it got really hard and morning sickness and back and forth with the trips to the hospital, you know, I'm not her partner. And I couldn't really care for her as a partner normally would in the intimate way, but I still wanted to be there because, you know, we decided to, you know, be a family. So how do you show somebody love and care and I guess intimacy in a way without overstepping the boundaries of being a friend? And that was something that took us both by surprise, which, you know, in the beauty of it all is that now we're able to actually be a little bit more open with each other and allow ourselves to be a little bit more vulnerable. But that only happened because she ended up getting pregnant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, amazing. Okay, so Maureen, I'd love to bring you in to just say a couple of words about, you know, what Mozi Baby is and does. And since some people have questions about conception, I just wanted to sort of bring you in this conversation. Then we'll open up to the whole panel. We've got a couple of other questions I want to touch on before we wrap up. So Maureen, welcome. Great to see you. You're in Austin, is that right?
I am. Hi, everyone. Hi, Lawrence. Hi, Raven. Hi, Biff. Thank you for sharing your stories. I've learned so much, and I'm just so proud of you all. And thank you for having me here, too, because I just learn every time I hear somebody's story, and I'm always blown away by the love that people have. So thank you.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about why did you create Mozi Baby and what is it, and how can it sort of help people in their parenthood conception journeys anyway?
Sure. So, you know, my husband and I struggled to conceive, and that's how our journey started. And we struggled for a few years and found ourselves in a doctor's office and looking at those procedures as well. But at the time, we just couldn't wrap our heads around why there wasn't something simple we could do at home that was designed honestly for a vagina, right? And for this process. And when we couldn't find it, one day my husband came home from a run and said, we should make it. And wildly, I said yes, because we have no background in this and we have no background in starting business like this. So somehow we forged ahead. At the time, this product didn't exist, and we ended up going through IUI. We had unexplained infertility, but we always knew that something like this should exist. There should be a simple option, and we ourselves, tried syringes, and I'm so glad that people do, and I'm so glad that they're out there. And we just felt like Goldilocks and the Three Bears, and it didn't work for us. So eventually we did create Mozi, which I have here, just a simple, well-designed, well-thought-out method for this process. So that's how we're here today. We love that we get to help people create families, and we love celebrating all families, no matter the formation and the way that they come together, because honestly, we're always blown away by the love that people have to bring a family together and what it takes and the tenacity sometimes. And so we feel honored and privileged, truly, to be able to do what we do. And I'm just so thankful for everybody who does share their stories, because we learn. This is how we learn, and we grow as a culture and a society. And you guys are making that possible with the work that you do at Family Equality, and we're just thrilled to be a part in some small way. So thank you.
So someone was asking, do you do the sperm washing process with Mozi Baby, or is it just for the ICI? How does that work?
Good question. So we do not. So the sperm washing process is something that Biff mentioned, and that's something you have to do at a doctor's office typically, or a medical provider's office. So the way that Mozi works is a simple transfer from live, fresh sperm. So you would collect that in the privacy of your home or the location of your choosing, and you can transfer to the syringe there, or you can take actually have one on my desk. The jar has a lid, and you can travel with it. So it's pretty easy to do.
Great. And then one more question before we go to other questions for other folks is, can you reuse the syringes?
So where we stand is we recommend that you do not reuse, and that's for a few reasons. And that's mainly to protect you, and also because there is a push-pull that's designed in here, and it has a small amount of medically safe lubricant. So it's a nice, tight push-pull at the end, so nothing is wasted. And because of that, we have that medically safe lubricant in there, which degrades upon washing. And so that's why we provide 2 syringes in the kit, to make sure that you have more than one attempt.
Great. And we have another sperm question, so we'll just stay with you. How long does the sperm survive in the cup before you use it?
A good question. We get asked that one frequently too. So with it, we recommend using the sperm within an hour, max an hour. I mean, ideally, you really want to be using it within 15, 20, 30 minutes. Sperm are pretty feisty, and if you have a really good, strong sample, they can survive for a while. I think people are shocked sometimes to learn that sperm can live outside of the body for a little bit of time. Some people think it dies upon being exposed to the air, but that is not the case. Obviously, we have some witnesses here that can prove that it does survive a transfer, and thankfully so.
Amazing. Okay, so some other questions that people had. Someone wanted to ask you, Raven, even though your partner's brother didn't end up being the donor, what did you imagine that sort of relationship being like between your future baby and having an uncle who's also a donor? Like, how did you sort of plan to have that conversation with your child? Or, what do you think that might have looked like for you all?
If we would have went with my brother-in-law, he would have been like a special uncle, but we were gonna wait until our child asked about their father, or we would wait until they were 18. But I'm pretty sure a child is curious. They're gonna go to school and meet friends who have opposite sex parents, and they're gonna say, "Hey, moms, I know you guys didn't make me on your own, so how did I get here?" So we were gonna be pretty open about how we got to having a child. it wasn't going to be a secret at all. And they're going to know that we used a donor when they finally do ask.
Great. And that is one of the questions that someone asked is like, how and when do you tell your child? And there really isn't an exact science around this. The thing that we know is psychologically best is that there isn't any dishonesty. And this learning actually comes from heterosexual couples who've used donors. For many decades, the recommendation was like basically never tell your kid that you needed a donor for either an egg donor or a sperm donor, because of infertility on either side. And it turns out that that's really bad for children, is to find out at later on in life that your parents lied to you about your origin story. And so luckily, as LGBTQ plus people have built our families, we're able to take that learning and, as developmentally appropriate, you said, Raven, either when they ask and answering the question as they're asking it, or proactively, as long as it's developmentally appropriate and you're honest with them. There's just no one perfect way to do it. And I think, Lawrence, your little one is little, right?
Doesn't feel that way, but yes. He's 19, 20 months, so yeah.
Okay, great. Well then, Biff, you have older kids, and Maureen, how old how old are your children or child?
Yeah, so our first child, the inspiration for Mozi baby, is 5. She just ran up to the door here. Well, thankfully I was muted. And then my Mozi baby, the first Mozi baby, our child, Frank, is 3. So yeah.
Great. So then Biff is the only one of the panelists who has the experience of having a child who's old enough to really hate you sometimes. And so that's what I just try to tell people is like, you are going to do your best. And like, there will still be times when your child tells you that you have done this the wrong way. And so you should just practice making peace with that now, because it's going to come up and you're going to feel like a failure in many, many
But
ways.
the thing that I have learned is that try not to create a moment where you have to reveal something to your child. You know what I mean? Like if you can set it up so that it's not like, I didn't want to ever have to sit my child down to be like, you're adopted. The one, because that might say something about what's happening up there if we're like 12 and sitting down and having to talk about it. But the other, but I think it's always nice to try to keep that communication open as you go. So my older kids, like, we've always talked about that. We have books about it. We've always talked about it.
And that's really, it's the shame that you're trying to get away from with that, is helping them feel proud and secure in who they are. So whatever anybody else says about them, there's no room for shame to sneak in because they're already super confident and secure with who they are. Okay, a couple of other questions. Can you use IUI sperm with Mozi?
You can. So IUI and ICI sperm. So I'm assuming it would be coming from a frozen sperm donor. So it'd be, or frozen sperm. So a sperm bank. You can purchase sperm in different vials. I actually might even have one on my desk too, if I can grab one. But they come, and IUI vials are just smaller amounts. So
Because they've been washed.
yeah, so it's been washed, so it can be directly put into the uterus. And it's typically designed for use in a doctor's office because it is about 5 ml of fluid, of semen, and that's a little bit to work with. So we do have families who have used IUI vials with success. Some have used 2 IUI vials though in an attempt, which is not right for everybody. So I always recommend people do what's right for them, what's right for their family and their situation that they are in. But yes, you can do that.
Cool. And then I think the last question before we do our little giveaway and send you all off on your way, both for Biff and for Lawrence and maybe for Raven too, people really love this idea of having books. What are some books that you know about that you can use to start that conversation or continue that conversation for, like, in your family?
So we have a 2-year-old, not quite Lawrence's 2. We're almost 3. There's a big difference. But there's a publishing company called Rampant Flamingo, and they have like tons of books that show different examples of gender and different versions of family and different characters of like racial backgrounds. And so they're a really great source to try to show your kids examples that like we're not all a mom and a dad and 3 kids and a dog and a cat. Some of us are a dad and a dad and 3 kids and a dog and a cat. And so that's like one source that we go to. You know, there's stupid little books. Like I shouldn't say stupid because I really love them, but Leo's favorite for a long time was called Daddy, Papa, and Me. It's probably like, I mean, I'm actually sitting in Leo's room, believe it or not. So it's probably like on the floor somewhere here. In any case, Rampant Flamingo has tons of great books like that. Yeah.
I wish I was sitting in my son's room so I can look at his books because he has a ton of them. But right now, I've just been reading a lot of Dr. Seuss, so I'm sorry that I can't recommend. We do have some actually very awesome like LGBTQ books. I just can't think of the titles or whatnot, but there is some material, and that's what we were afraid of. We were afraid that there wasn't any material to actually read to our child that they would be able to say, oh, okay, that's familiar to us. But you don't have to really fall down the rabbit hole of a Google search that far. You can literally just type it in and so much comes up. And there's a lot of good content on Instagram as well, you know, for those that are very social media savvy. So the material's out there for sure.
Yeah, and I don't know specific titles, but the Human Rights Campaign, they have their Welcoming Schools program. And if you go to the Welcoming Schools site, they actually have a list of books from K through 12th grade that you can look through for however old your child is. And that's called Welcoming Schools.
I'll just make a plug for the library system, depending on where you live. And I know a lot of libraries are closed right now, but I do know that our library and a lot of local libraries will celebrate Pride Month, and they oftentimes will feature you can just walk into the library and you'll see some, but if you can't find a book, you can also request it from your library, and I encourage you to request books from your library so that if they don't have it, they can put it on a list to get entered into the library system. So just a little plug there to use your library system as well when you're looking for books.
Amazing. Thank you so much for that. And then I did just put, I just put in the chat, the Family Equality. We have a book nook as well, sorted by age. And so you can look at little all the way up to adults and parents. We also do a lot of work with our shelves, which someone just recommended in questions. I'll put that in the chat. And that's actually a subscription book service where it's queer owned and run, and they send you books every month or every quarter based on your kid's age. So everything from little board books all the way up to bigger kids books and chapter books. So there's another option as well. So thank you again so much to our amazing panelists who shared their stories. It isn't easy to dig deep and, you know, go back through all of these experiences. I was going to ask Raven if you will show us your little baby bump. If that's something that you feel comfortable doing, you do not have to. Oh, okay, that's very sweet. Thank you. I appreciate that. And I really appreciate you spending this time with us. Please do stay connected with Family Equality. We want to support you all along your journey. The thing that we're actually best known for is Family Week, which is a whole week of activities in Provincetown, Massachusetts, which is a little resort beachy town, which is like a gay Disneyland, basically. And this year we had to cancel, but our hope is that in the next couple of years, we will see you all there. So thanks for being with us, everyone. Thanks for our panelists, and have a lovely rest of your day.